Yeah, we'll call the roll. Mayor Joe McComb. Council members Roland Barrera. Here. Rudy Garza.
Here.
Paulette Guajardo. Absent. Gil Hernandez.
Here.
Michael Hunter.
Here.
Ben Molina.
Ben texted, said he would be about an hour late, he thinks.
Okay.
We may be through by then.
Everett Roy.
Here.
Greg Smith.
Here.
City Manager Peter Zanoni.
Here.
Assistant City Attorney Buck Bryce. Here. Mayor and Council, a quorum of the council and the required charter officers are present to conduct the meeting.
All right. For those that are watching by television or on their computer, this is the beginning of the budget discussions for 2019 and 20. At our last council meeting, Mr. Zanoni presented us an overview of what he was going to do, and now we're getting, as they say, down in the weeds.
Right.
So we've got our gardening gloves, and we're ready to start. So, Mr. Manager, if you'll tell us which department you want to start with, and then we'll get going or make any opening remarks.
Okay, great. Yes, good morning, Mayor and Council, and thank you for being here this morning. So this is our first of 4 and potentially 5. We have a 5th reserved in case the council needs more time. Work sessions on the budget. We'll be meeting this time for the next 3 Thursdays from the hours of 9 to 11 or longer if we need. And then we do have that 5th Thursday reserved in case we need more time with the council. But as you said, Mayor, this is an opportunity for the council and the community to better learn about the budget. I did provide that higher level overview last week. Over the next 4 weeks, the directors of the various departments will present to you not only the changes in the budget, but also some information on their baseline operations, what they do as a department, some of their goals, and some of their accomplishments. We do have budget staff here, and so they will be helping to facilitate the meetings. And in the event we can't answer a question in the work sessions, the budget office will be recording those questions, and we'll get to you within a week's time the answers to those questions. So the goal is to get all the questions answered from the mayor and council during the work sessions. But if we can't, the budget office is tracking those, and we'll provide them to you in written format within a week of the event.
All right.
We'll also be tracking any potential amendments to the budget. As you said, Mayor, the charter requires that I present a proposed balanced budget, and that's what we did last week. However, the council has the prerogative, and ultimately it's your decision to adopt a balanced budget, and so there may be changes on the proposed budget. Our budget director, Eddie, is here, and his staff will be tracking any potential amendments, and as we get close to our 4th or 5th work session, as a body, the council will discuss those collectively and ultimately decide on any amendments to the proposed budget that was presented.
All right.
And then one other thing, just to more so for the viewing public, we do, in addition to receiving city council input, we need to get the citizens' input on the budget. And so the council has endorsed 5 work sessions on the budget out in each of the 5 city council districts over the next 2 weeks. And that includes next week we have 3 on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday from the hours of 6 to 7. The first 3 community hearings on the budget, and then after next week there's 2 additional ones. That schedule's been advertised and it's on our website, and so we encourage the public to come out. It won't be too long of an affair, but we will show a video on the budget. I'll talk a little bit. The council member whose district that is will kind of be the welcoming person, but the staff will help to manage those meetings, and we'll be there to record any input from the community in terms of changing the budget as well.
Right.
Okay, so we do have several things lined up. The budget time's always an important time, but it does take time and energy. And the budget, as we know, is a city's probably most significant planning strategy for a fiscal year. That's where we're going to show the community how we're going to deliver services and capital improvements. So it's an important time, and we thank people for being a part of it. So this morning we have 2 of our most prominent departments, our police and fire departments, and both chiefs will be making those presentations this morning. We're going to start with Chief Markle, who will present for the police department.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Mike Markle, Police Department. This morning I'll be presenting the police budget. followed by Code Enforcement presented by Assistant Chief David Blackman, followed by Animal Care from Mike Gillis, Animal Care Director. So the police department, the mission statement is to reduce crime, the fear of crime, and enhance public safety. A couple overview points about our department. We handled over 20,000 criminal investigations last year, received over 400,000 calls for service, and provided traffic enforcement for 96 different events. We work hard with the community in all their events. Our department is broken up into 3 main divisions within the department. You have an operations division, an investigative division, and an administrative division. Each one of those overseen by an assistant chief. And then we have a management services director that is at that level also, that oversees our civilian personnel, budget, and reports directly to me. And it's Pat Eldridge. By the way, tomorrow is Pat's birthday. Sorry, Pat. She's happy birthday. Some of our achievements, just a few of those, are the radio project is underway. That's the recent bond that you have all proposed and had passed in the community, which we're very thankful for. We've end of life at our current radio system. It's lasted about 30 years, which is wonderful. Completion of the forensics evidence building, that is for vehicle forensics. That's a first for us. It's very much needed. Took a long time to get that done, but it's very welcomed and it's very, very useful. Purchase of body-worn cameras operationally throughout the department. We've had partial deployment throughout the last few years. This is the first time we've had all operational and smooth. If an officer's out there working in uniform, they have a body camera on. That's a very big upgrade, and that's a great step forward. And the conversion, I wanted to put this on here from UCR, which is our Uniform Crime Report, to the National Incident-Based Reporting System. Now, I wanted to speak about that because the numbers that the rest of the world will see will change. Because under UCR, if you have a sequence of crime, only the highest crime is shown. Those minor crimes below it, or not so minor crimes below it, are not shown. So what will happen, and we've already transferred to NIBRS, National Incident-Based Reporting System. So what's going to happen is that when they report crime throughout the nation, you'll see number for number reporting. Something we've always tracked, but something that the FBI has changed in their reporting standards. And by the way, our unit was one of the first to be certified in that, with the less than 1% failure rate on reporting. We're actually a minuscule amount, 0.017 or something like that. It was a great operational achievement for us. I can't say enough about the group that did that. Some of our performance measures. I included UCR violent crime numbers only because I wanted to express to you again the transition to NIBRS, which is important, so you all are educated in what you can respond to the public if they see numbers that jump up. It's not a change in the actual crime, it's just the way that we report them. Calls for service are responding to emergency calls, benchmark of 8 minutes and 22 seconds. Our goal is to be there at 90% of the time. We're right around 87%. Goal next year is to get to that 90% mark. DWI arrests, if you'll notice, they're down a little bit this year due to the larger exit of personnel because of the retirement changes. We've been running short-staffed in some of our units. Traffic enforcement is one of those units, and we hope to recoup those numbers by the end of the year. So you'll see the same in traffic citations issued, same reasoning. Just wanted to let you all know that we are working hard to correct those numbers or rise to the level of service when we have those personnel. Our academy that is in the FTO program is getting out as we speak. They're on their final phase, so we should infuse them within the department to bolster those units. Our services are to respond to calls for service, investigate crime, enforce traffic laws, and work within the community. I think we do all those very well. Several events, for example, the Operation Safe Return and CCPAL, which is a Corpus Christi Police Athletic League. Both of those serve thousands of our at-risk youth and youth in need in this community. Police Department's proposed budget is $91 million, $80.9 million from the general fund. That's a $3.7 million increase. Crime control, $76 $7.6 million, just less than $2 million in grants, for a total of $91 million. Our sworn personnel, as you see, will change this year moving forward from 446 budgeted positions, sworn positions, to 451. And our civilian will increase by 1. As I said, our proposed general fund budget's $80.9 million. 72.9 is from general fund, general resources, and $8 million are from permits and fees in the form of revenue. Our crime control budget is $7.6 million. The schedule of that has already been approved by the Crime Control Board on June 19th. Next Tuesday, August 13th, you will have first reading of and public hearing of the proposed crime control budget, followed by the next Tuesday for the second reading. And as you know, crime control budget by legislative act has to be approved 30 days before your general fund budget. Our grants fund, just less than $1.9 million. You know, we pull a lot of grants in. VOCA, Victims of Crime Grant, VAWA, Violence Against Women's Act, Auto Theft Task Force, Interdiction, STEP grants, Seatbelt, Click It or Ticket. There's a myriad of grants that we work to achieve every year to bolster overtime and to add public safety initiatives throughout our community. Our law enforcement trust fund, these are the funds that we recoup for asset forfeiture when we raid drug houses, things like that. State contribution is $225,000. Federal side's $250,000. And the difference between that is just where we file those cases. If we file them through state, asset forfeiture comes through a state account. If we file them federally, it goes to the federal account. Now, LEOS is in there. LEOS is a law enforcement officer standard training. That's a distribution from state based on number of officers. So there's a set rate based on your officers. They give each department X amount of dollars for training. Some of our enhancements moving forward, we're going to have 5 new police officers in the next academy, followed by a plan to add 5 more through fiscal year 2024, which is an addition of 25 officers. The next slide, you'll see our cadet schedule. We currently have Academy 78 that is in class right now. They will spill out into the field in February and start their field training exercises, which will carry them to August. July of next year, you'll see Academy 79 start, which is where you'll have those extra 5 officers from this budget. Replacement of the 800 megahertz radio system, or radios themselves. This is something that we've been working on. Peter Collins has done outstanding work in getting this done. It's also end of life, and all of our partners within the Metrocom system will be upgrading their radios. As you know, there's a P25 initiative, and that's so that public safety can speak to each other as they move through the entire state. It's something that's mandated. In-car video systems, same story. Our current one is end of life. This is in the process right now of being replaced. It's a big enhancement, big commitment from the city council, from the city manager, and much needed. We've unfroze 3 positions in the 911 call center. That's going to help us tremendously. Should help with overtime and should help with scheduling. And a digital forensics analyst, and that is somebody that works in our ICAC unit. Now, our ICAC unit is the Internet Crimes Against Children unit. As you know, they chase down child pornographers online. It's a great unit. We work with Homeland Security on this. It's not much talked about for obvious reasons, but it's a very, very successful unit, one we don't want to do without. And of course, the final one is additional overtime funding for beach safety. Our overtime from the hot tax on the island has been about $154,000 since its inception. It's being raised to $204,000, and that should help out in coverage. We're going to move on to code enforcement with Assistant Chief David Blackman.
Thank you, Chief.
Good morning, Council. David Blackman, Police Department. I will be presenting the code enforcement budget. So code enforcement, the mission statement, strengthen neighborhoods by preventing deterioration of housing and commercial properties through the enforcement and abatement of code violations. So a little bit about code enforcement. So kind of our core, what we do is to investigate violations such as tall grass, junk vehicles, solid waste issues on properties, off properties. That's obviously dealt with from solid waste. They have code enforcement officers over there also, and then deteriorated structures. So these violations, the way we address them, we actually break them down into 3 different ways. So we have the call center, which is more often than not how these complaints come in. They'll take the call and then they'll route them. They'll route them to our code enforcement database, and then we'll take care of it. Another way is our online reporting system through the City of Corpus Christi website. And our third one is the mobile app, where individuals can go on their smartphones and enter these violations. When looking at these violations, they're broken down into priority levels for obvious reasons. The more serious code violations that present health and safety concerns for the citizens are at the top of the list, and they'll work down into less serious ones like the signage issues on the right-of-ways and that kind of stuff. That way, with the number of code enforcement officers we have, that we can get to the more serious ones first and then work our way down. So when we look at our performance measures, you can see that in fiscal year 18, we were at 16,000, and in 20, we're looking at code compliance investigating cases at 20,250. We're going to do this by retaining the number of code officers we have. So one of the challenges that we have faced is retention with code officers. So I think currently we're down about 5 code officers, and I've told you all before that we have 22 code officers in the department. So retention has been an issue for us, and at the direction of the city manager. So we have implemented a career ladder, and we have looked at best practices and pay wages around the state and come up with a pay system that we're hoping is going to retain these officers. So that's what we're looking at doing this budget year, is retaining the code officers, see where we end up. I believe that if we can retain these code officers, that we can be successful, and then if we need to add code officers next fiscal year, we'll request it. So when you're looking at our proposed budget for 2020, it's $2.7 million. 2.2 million of that is going to come out of general funds, and then 500,000 comes out of our CDBG grant, which was our community development block grant, and that pays for 6 officers, 5 code officers and 1 administrative support person, and then pays for some abatement in the form of demolitions, 100,000, and mowing and clearing, which is another 100,000 to assist us out of general fund to address all these problem properties that we have. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Animal Care Services.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Thank you for taking the time to listen to our presentations. I'm Mike Gillis, Animal Care Services. There we go. I'll start out with our general mission statement is to promote responsible pet ownership and prevent spread of animal-borne diseases and protect the public by seizing stray nuisance animals. Our organizational chart here, you can see we're relatively flat. And the item in red I'll put is our proposed addition to staff. We'll see the live release team under the animal care supervisors. That's a new proposed position that is not currently there. So that would be a +1. In kennel staff, we currently have 2 full-time kennel staff, and we're proposing adding a 3rd. Some of our achievements for 2019. I'm very proud of this first one. We increased live release from 80% to 87%, and that's we certainly couldn't have done that without the support and the help, certainly of City Council, but also the public and our rescue partners. So that's a big jump, and I just want to give credit where credit's due, that we didn't do it alone. It took the community. We increased our adoptions by 20%. Again, that goes hand in hand with the first achievement. We've expanded our services. You know, in February, we started opening to the public on Sundays. Prior to that, we were not open to the public on Sundays. So now citizens have the opportunities to come in and look for their lost pets, or come in, you know, maybe on their way home from church, and come in and get a furry friend to bring home with them. And then enforcement citations are up 15%. That's a combination of enforcement and education. We're just not out there to write tickets. We certainly would prefer to just have the conversation with the community and get them on board. A couple of our performance measures, you can see our calls for service are up this year by about 10%. We're looking at having about 21,000 calls for service this year. Number of animals adopted, to give you a raw number, is, you know, it's 1,200 animals we're looking at adopting. And our target goal we had was 600 in a year. So I'm extremely pleased with that number. In our live release, just to give you some raw numbers on there, you know, over 3,500 animals went out the door alive, and that's an increase of approximately 7%. Our services here are broken up, and there's overlap between these three. We've got about 20 FTEs dedicated to field enforcement, and that does include Vector in there. Shelter care, about 13 FTEs. That includes the clinic staff, the front office staff, which deals with registration and other items, in community programs, and there's overlap there. That's community programs, adoption events, having schools come in, working with the community within the shelter and out in the community. Our proposed budget for 2020 is $3.3 million. That's a slight increase. As you can see, that's an increase in 2 FTEs in a position from 33 to 35 FTEs, all from the general fund. And the breakdown here, we get about $3.1 million from the general fund and about $200,000 from permit and fees in the form of revenues. Proposed enhancements for 2020, the first one is to adding a live release coordinator. This will give us an opportunity to have, you know, a full-time professional person to manage our, you know, over 150 rescue partners that we have, adoption events, and any foster activities. Increased kennel staff from 2 to 3. I purposely put a picture in the center there of an animal control officer cleaning the kennel, because hopefully with the addition of a kennel staff, it'll prevent us having to use animal control officers, pulling them out of the field to come in and help to clean kennels. And third enhancement will be, in addition to the budget of about a little over $58,000 for chemicals, for larviciding for mosquitoes, and adulticiding, and the prevention of mosquito-borne diseases, as well as the pesky bites that they can inflict on all of us. That's it.
Mayor, we thought we'd do the police first. You can ask questions at this point, and then at your prerogative, we could have the fire chief come up second. So at this time, you can ask questions if you'd like.
All right, Mr. Hunter. All right. Mr. Garza.
Just a couple of questions for my information only. The new officers, and when we talk about adding 5 additional officers, we've already got an academy going, or academy started.
That's correct. There's an academy that started
you had so many
month.
applicants. Say, for instance, we had 700 applicants, and you invited 35 or 40. What kind of number did we invite?
We
in?
started 36. Started 36. This academy.
So that 36 number, does that include 5 that we would be able to?
Well, the
to
answer
put
is
into the workforce already, or
the answer is a maybe. If our attrition rate doesn't match what's on average, then it could.
oh, okay,
So we're always chasing attrition. Remember, we front load our academies in anticipation of attrition.
Right.
So that's why this last year's attrition was very impactful, because folks had waited until this new retirement and then they left. So it was almost double what's normal. So It could. It could include those 5. If not, they'll be included in the July Academy of next year.
Okay, good. And so the attrition the additional attrition number that we got this last year, the 36 already works, is
That's
taking that
correct.
into account?
The 36 are from that.
Okay, and then on the code enforcement side, I saw that there was a larger number of structures that were demolished in 2019 versus 2018. And typically, we can only demolish based on the funding we have. How did we accomplish that? I mean, that's good, but I always know that the challenge that we have, and from the time that I was on the Building Standard Board, was always, do we have the partners that we need to have in order to be able to get as much as we can possibly get done? And did we have additional funding? And are we going to do more next year? Do we have the funding to do that?
Right. And those are good questions, sir. So I think there's a couple of things. So we were, the number of structures we get demolished is obviously contingent on the Building Standards Board meeting and if we have a quorum or not. So we've been fortunate we've got that. And then moving forward, the National Guard has come back in to start assisting us again. And I think the last time they came in, we ended up getting 23 structures down, if I'm correct. So and that was a savings of about $75,000 to the taxpayers. So there's no cost. So we're going to continue doing that kind of stuff.
So that's how that number got bumped up because of their
right.
other...
And then we'll be moving forward, hopefully yearly, we'll be able to keep that up.
We're expecting to get their help next
Yes,
year,
sir.
too. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mr. Smith?
Thank you, and thank you, Chief and staff, for the excellent presentation. And I appreciate the demolition on there, and particularly you working on code enforcement, Chief. We need to keep that retention going. So thanks for your efforts there with it. But my basic question, Chief Markle, when we're switching on the national incident reporting with it, what is going to be the effect on our crime stats? What are we going to see out? How we rate with other communities? Will that show us higher, lower, stay the same?
That'll stay the same. The reporting standard will be across the board for all communities. And there's more compelling reasons now for communities to properly submit their numbers too, because they've tied some grant funding and stuff in with this. Now, right now, UCR is completely voluntary, so there are some things you have to look at. They might not be apples to apples, but your rankings should not change.
Okay, and if I'm understanding right, we basically been reporting like we should report. We're switching systems on there, but there may be some other communities voluntary reporting, and their numbers may not have been quite as accurate.
That's true.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we've always not reported number for number, and what you all get is number for number. We've never deviated from that.
PD's always been an honest engine on there.
Well, that's the only way to be. I don't want to have to add that.
That's a very good way to be. Thanks.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Mr. Hernandez?
Just a few questions, and I have questions for police, code enforcement, as well as animal control. So starting off with police, I notice you have $1.9 million in grant
Correct.
funding, but it's not necessarily something that's reflected in the budget in terms of how that's monitored and performance management. And you have an increase over the previous year. And this is probably more a question toward our city manager and our finance department. How are we going to be tracking these grants for performance management?
Right. Each grant program has a specific service level of, that we're expecting, and the chief has to report not only to us in terms of delivery of that, but also to the granting agency, the grantor. And so it's part of managing performance is looking at delivering on time and within the budget, making sure they deliver what they say they're going to deliver with respect to the grant program.
Okay, so just reflecting on what we're looking at from the city council, there's no visibility to where we are on the grants that we're applying for and whether we get them or not. Obviously, there's no guarantee that you get all the grants. Some are reoccurring and some are new grants. How is it that we're going to be able to visibility to that? Because every now and then we'll get expenditure requests and it references a grant, but there's nothing for us to see that, okay, this is how much money we have in grants for this particular department.
Okay, so one thing we're going to, I'm not sure if we've done it in the past, but one thing we'll be beginning to do is we'll be doing monthly analysis of spending and delivery of services across all funds. I'll be doing that with each of the directors through the budget office. And then quarterly, we're going to be reporting to the council on performance to include grant funding. So you'll be able to see on that quarterly report what the grant amount was, what was supposed to have been delivered in that quarter, and then what actually was. And so we'll be providing the council quarterly updates on the budget to include grant programming.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. And I'm not sure what that's going to look like, but if we can kind of see what that, I mean, what it's going to be.
Yeah.
Okay. Chief, you'd mentioned on your performance measurements, you're trying to do emergency calls within 8.22 seconds of 90%. Currently, your target per the performance reporting is 80%. Are you actually changing the target, or is that just an internal goal?
It's currently 87%. It's an internal goal of 90. You're talking about...
The target is 80%.
Oh, the target is 80, yeah, that's correct.
And you're achieving 87%.
That's correct. We've raised our target.
So you're going to raise your target to 90%?
That's the goal, yeah.
Okay, so, all right. It's ambitious. I applaud you for it.
That's the goal. The goal should move forward. So we'll give it a whirl.
Question for animal control. I noticed there was no grants in your proposed budget. Is that a reflection that there's no grants out there? I mean, what's the reason for not going after grants?
There are some grants out there, and that's something I plan to certainly pursue in 2020.
Okay, so this gets back to my original question about grants and performance management. Understanding, is there a target for grants, and then trying to achieve that in terms of that. So the Chief has gave us a target of $1.9 million in specific grants, and I'm assuming you've already have them targeted and which ones you're going after.
Correct.
So if we don't know about it on the front end, how do we hold you accountable to get those grants on the back end? So if we have that mechanism to do that, so we can track along those lines, because I mean, obviously, you know, there's not enough money for everything, and if we can go out and get that money from other places and actively pursue it, then we can do it. And then as a council and as city manager, we can do the performance management, making sure that that's happening. And we can, if you need help, or if you need whatever that needs to go get those grants, well, let's kind of figure out what we need to do that.
Yes, sir.
But you know, if we can have visibility to how that all works. All right, that's a question I have, sir. Thank you. Oh, Chief Blackman, if we can, we still want to get together with you on code enforcement meeting and kind of see what you guys do.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Smith is out. Ms. Wardo.
Thank you. I'm going to start with the grant comments. We don't have a grant writer. The city does not have a grant writer. And not to say, I don't want to use to your defense, but it kind of is. And this is very important because I've had a couple of conversations with the city manager on this, and I think this has been brought up for a few years. We need a grant writer. You know, whatever you do for a living, you imagine, and not that it can't be done, because it is done. And I know that Pat takes care of grants. Libraries, their employees have, or, you know, a particular one has taken care of grants, but it's extremely difficult because they have a job every day. And please correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Zanoni, but if a department can get a grant, I think it's a big deal and it's a big plus, but they're shorthanded. And so, to your point, we need a grant writer, and I think we're just losing a lot of money in not having someone with the city to be able to focus on some of these departments. Again, I don't know how it works. I know, Pat, you take care of some of that. Some of that could be contracted out by department if they have money. I'm not sure, but I do believe that we need a grant writer in every department. But I know in animal care services, it's extremely important, even fire. You know, we have that task money, over $2 million, because someone was able to sit down and say, okay, let me write this grant. And I keep wanting to go to those grant workshops because I want to learn how to write a grant because they're so valuable. So I think that I would love to see, Mr. Zanoni, what we can do to include a grant writer, contract one out. And again, I don't know how that works in terms of how many departments, what departments that would benefit most or how we would utilize that. But I think it's just extremely important because we can't really sit up here and say, well, why aren't you going after grants? Well, because you're trying to make the department move every day and you may not have the time to do that. So side note on that again. And on a very positive note, again, I want to thank you for the plan on police, on adding police. But on that same note, I think everybody knows that I strongly believe that public safety, is our most important service to the community. And we are growing. We're growing on the south side. We're growing in Calallen. This is good, but it's not enough, and I think we all acknowledge that. So thank you, though, for at least coming forth with that plan. Couple of questions, Chief Markle. What the forensic analyst that we're adding? How many people are in? I mean, that department exists, but you're adding a person to that department or an analyst? I mean,
we're adding a position in general fund, so that the forensic analyst is the one who does the very technical analysis of phones and computers, and it's a very high-tech position. And it's, in this case, it's done for internet child pornography and those types of things.
And we don't have one now, though.
We have one now. It's been paid out of drug funds.
Okay.
But we're moving that to general fund where it's better. We have a regular employee now,
I see.
which is great.
Okay. And then under beach safety, so what can you tell us a little bit on how that works? I know you're additional overtime funding for beach safety.
That's your hot tax officer that works Padre Island, 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's paid through hot tax on an overtime basis. It's in the Bravo district out in Councilman Smith's district.
Okay.
And it's been $154,000 since its inception. So we've needed to raise those funds to offset the cost of officers. How long has that been going on, Pat?
20 years.
20 years. So we've rightfully needed to increase those funds from hot tax.
Okay, and what about North Beach, that in terms of beach safety out there and an officer?
Well, hot tax won't pay for an officer out there. That's a state hot tax, so that's the different parameters from what I'm told. So we're exploring that right now. We've changed North Beach to be its own designated beat. Number one, so it doesn't share any beat restrictions in town. So when an officer is assigned to that, they're assigned to North Beach. And we've also added extra patrol out there through bicycles. We have a UTV now. It's parked on the Lexington with Captain Banta is working with us. So we've increased enforcement out there. But we don't have a hot tax or a state hot tax paying for an officer out there.
Okay. And then to code enforcement, thank you, because I know your plate is full. And I am very happy to see that, or to hear that you guys are going to restructure or work on the retention of the employees there, but thank you for what you do. Mr. Gillis, or could you tell us a little bit, I don't know if the council knows or not, about the new kennels? When are they going to be done? I think you're working on, they're being worked on now?
They're being worked on right now, and the plan is, if I recall correctly, because I just got an update from Jesse, would be by late this fall.
Okay, and how many are they?
19
new ones?
19 additional kennels for dogs, yes.
Well, then your lot release is going to go up.
Yes, it's also an increase in cleaning by about 24%.
Hence the
you have to think of both sides of that. More animals.
We're always chasing something. God. No, well, that's great. I think that's great news. It's a big plus for your department, so thank you. And the life release coordinator. I'm super happy to hear about that. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Zanoni, for making that happen. I think that's all I have. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Wright.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. presentation. One of the things that I've had some feedback on I want to share is related to North Beach. I've had, in meeting just in general with some of the homeowners associations and just some of the other groups I've been involved in there, the community has seen an improvement in terms of a lot of the things that they were talking about a year and a half ago that were concerns. So thanks for sharing that information about the fact that you made that its own separate beat, because I know that there was something that has taken place. I've seen the change, and again,